We are ready to go. Hey everyone, welcome to our Hispanic Heritage Kickoff. We're super excited to be here. We are at the Dotdash Meredith headquarters in New York, so a big thank you to our Dotdash Meredith partners. And also a big thank you to everyone who is here. I know we have a lot of folks dialing in virtually, but I'm super excited. Hispanic Heritage Month is here. I'm thrilled to be part of this and kind of help our fabulous leader put this together. So for many of you who don't know who I am, I'm Mike Roca. I'm the executive director of Elevate at Omnicom Media Group, and I have the distinct honor of sitting on the board of directors of ACE. So I was told just to make this really fast. But with that said, I want to kind of introduce our amazing moderator and panelists to the stage, and hope you all enjoy this amazing session. Thank you.
Everyone joining us both in person and virtually. Happy Hispanic Heritage Month pre-launch. Officially, the day kicks off tomorrow. And I want to also thank Mike Roca and your team, the Dash Meredith Group, for hosting us here in this amazing, beautiful space. So thank you very much, Mike. To the ACE staff for all of their hard work and dedication, especially Bobby and Jalen. Thank you for all of your hard work. And we're going to have an amazing conversation today. I am proud of being Latina, proud of being Mexican American, the daughter of immigrants, being first-generation college graduate, first generation going into professional workforce, and above all, it is through these many roles and identities that I uphold that has really instilled in me my personal mission of being able to serve as an advocate for access and equity for various reasons, experiences that I experienced as a child, as I got into my education, as I got into the professional workforce. I know many of us are either familiar with ACE or this is your first time connecting with the organization. I want to provide an overview on the great work that the organization that we've been doing since 1982. And well, the mission has remained the same since 1982. As you can imagine, the way that we deliver on that has evolved over time, especially the last 15 years when we became more programmatic focused, and especially the last 3 years with the change that we've all experienced where we converted more to e-learning and virtual platforms. Our mission being to positively impact workplaces by cultivating the pipeline of Latino talent, providing our community the insight, access, and support to be successful in their careers. And the way that we carry on our mission are through 3 core pillars. One is the talent acquisition, so programs, services, events, where we're actively connecting our employer partners to anywhere from interns to senior level talent. 2 is our pipeline and leadership development programs that are cohort models that include individual coaching, leadership assessments, culturally relevant content, and most importantly, what I'm most proud of, creates a multi-generational support network across the nation where we have folks getting started in their career, students to more senior levels that are able to engage with one another throughout these program efforts throughout the year. And thirdly is through thought leadership. Thought leadership being Chief Diversity Officer roundtables, executive leadership forums, events like this where we celebrate, where we share best practices and we learn and connect with one another. On the screen, you see some of the programs that I mentioned that start as young as the high school level with El Futuro, all the way to our inaugural ALSA, which is an advanced leadership program that we currently have 15 executive directors from a financial institution participating, and there's been already immediate impact where people are getting promoted, where people are seeing, their supervisors are seeing the impact that these programs have. So very proud. I know we've got some alum here in the room virtually participating, so welcome back. And to new folks, we welcome you to be part of the ACE Familia. I want to share, we've checked a pulse earlier this year on our members in terms of a couple of things. One is representation in terms of, we asked, as an employee, are you motivated, inspired, surprised to see successful people like you in leadership roles? And as you can see, the majority were motivated and inspired. And again, this tells us even further the need to ensure that we are creating diverse representation, not only within the organization, but specifically in leadership and positions of power and influence. The second thing we asked was regarding Value system. Latinos increasingly want to be able to see alignment with their values at the top and their leadership teams, right? Values of collectiveness, right? Values of inclusivity, which is a lot of the DEI work that many of us in this space are looking to do. Salud. Upskilling, right? We talk about the importance of professional development and upskilling. Interestingly enough, you see a good majority are interested in being able to develop their soft skills, their transferable skills. You think about the asset programs, that's exactly what we're doing, is helping build leadership capabilities, helping build confidence so that we unleash our Latinidad and we're confident in going into the workplaces with that. And lastly, the ROI, right? We've seen engagement studies as it pertains to HR, employee engagement development, is that when folks are feeling that they are valued, that we are investing in their development and their upskill, they have the propensity to be retained, to be engaged, and to be able to recommend and be that referral for you as you're looking for more connections. And so, I want to share that today we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month kickoff. And this month, that officially launches on September 15th through October 15th, was first launched by Lyndon Johnson in 1968. And then it became, at that time it was a week, and then it became an official month in 1988 with President Reagan. And the reasoning for September 15th to October 15th, there's other Latin American countries, and Mexico included, that celebrates our heritage during this time frame. And so we'll get to talk a little bit about Hispanic Heritage Month, and I hope that we're all celebrating, but it's important to know that organizations like ASA exist because we don't have to do it just during this month. We need to do this year-round, ensuring that we are creating awareness, we're sharing our stories, and that collectively we're building more inclusive, equitable workspaces. And on top of that, and one of the reasons why we have the amazing speakers that are joining us today, is to really shine light on the topic and the work that needs to be done. This year, as we do every year, we come up with a theme that we want to focus through our pláticas, our charlas, and conversations that really hone in on this theme. And this year, for us, it's accelerating equity with action and accountability. Meaning that not only us at ASE, but in partnership with the employers that we're working with, we're pushing further to double down and ensure that we're getting more people in programs, that we're launching new innovative programs, that we're piloting, that we're testing, and trying new innovative things because a lot has not been working, but not only that, a lot of gaps have widened during the pandemic. So there's a need to accelerate, ensuring that women are not only closing the gap, eliminating the pay gap, but then some, right, for what's been lost during that time. And so I want you to please join me in welcoming our amazing panelists to get this conversation going. So we have Claudia Romo Eromen, who is the founder and CEO of We Are All Human Foundation. Claudia, bienvenida. Gracias, gracias. We have Sarah Porritt, who's the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at Omnicom Media Group. And Jason Rosario, who is the Chief Diversity and Equity Inclusion Officer at BBDO Worldwide. Bienvenido. Welcome.
Should we sit?
Who's excited? All right. Muy bien, muy bien. So first things first, you probably have gotten to know who our great speakers are if you've connected with them on LinkedIn or you're following the great work that they're doing. And we encourage you to do that if you have not yet, because I see that there's some amazing work that you are all doing day to day as it pertains to building inclusive, equitable workspaces. But my first question to each of you is anything that you can share about your cultural background, about your identity, and or why you do what you do. So give us a little background on who you are. Claudia?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much. I'm incredibly excited, actually, to be doing this in the framework of an agency. I think that that's where I want to see most change right now. That's the industry where I want to see it. So I'm Claudia. I was born in Mexico, daughter of a basketball player with a basketball player. So you know that you know that basketball is my sport. But I was for the entirety of my life. I was a diplomat and a global mobilization expert. I worked for 25 years in Europe, and then my work with the United Nations moved me to New York, and that was the first ever time 10 years ago that I heard that I was a Hispanic. I never heard even that line in my life. I was like, what is this Hispanic thing? I've been a happy Mexican my entire life. So I think that my connection to the topic is as a newcomer, surprised by belonging to a group that I never heard that existed to start with. And then by being a marketer, going into okay, so what is this new group that I'm gonna belong, and start looking at the data, and then comparing that data to the reality and seeing such a mismatch. In reality, Latinos are powerful. In paper, Latinos are powerful. The reality of Latinos is that even ourselves, we think we're weak. We're big in numbers, but we're seen as small. So I think that I started as a marketer, started getting excited about fixing that reverse marketing problem that we have, because the reality of Latinos is amazing, is that we have a massive perception problem, and that's why I'm excited actually to start looking at how do we bridge that gap of the perception so that the representation can increase as well.
Yeah, and thank you, Claudia. And I will say, not only on behalf of ACE, but many of the other Latino organizations, is that with your work, we're able to heighten additional visibility as a marketer, as you mentioned, in terms of what are the challenges and why it's important, right? So thank you for that. Gracias. Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah Porritt, she, her, hers. I'm wearing a red dress, shortish black hair, heels, even though I haven't worn heels in about 2 years since I just had 2 kids. But I identify as being Chinese American. I was born in Xiamen, China, which is actually a beautiful island with a beach and palm trees, which is typically not what you would think of as the landscape of China, if you will. And I moved here when I was 8 years old. Was bullied, never really felt like I belonged, and then I found R&B music, and I decided to be a pop star. And that's maybe loosely termed because, I only got so far, but definitely something I was very, very passionate about.
On your profile?
Sure, if you dig deeply enough, although it would make me very embarrassed. But I realized that, given my passions, my pursuits, there weren't that many people that look like me in the R&B world, and there still aren't. And there's a real opportunity there. And, I, through many lifetimes and stories, felt like I was the other, whether it was coming to the U.S., whether it's being a part of the world of R&B music, and even sitting in boardrooms today, I've felt othered. And so I've developed a lot of empathy and compassion for the others and for feeling that way. And so, I'm realizing that going into media and advertising, as much as I love the media and advertising world, because I did work in investment and strategy, I very much found purpose and value in the work that I was doing above and beyond my 9 to 5, my 5 to 9, if you will. And so I realized that, it's a wonderful opportunity now for me to rediscover that purpose by pivoting my career professionally to elevate the underserved voices, underheard voices, and that's why I've stepped into the world of diversity and equity and inclusion, and I'm very blessed and humbled to be here today with everyone.
Thank you, Sarah.
That was great. So I can attest to Sarah. She's incredible. I've seen some of your videos. So Jason Rosario, I am a 6'4" black man, bald head, wearing a blue jacket. And I roll my R's on purpose because that's important. It's important to kind of call into this space the idea of the fact that I am an Afro-Latino, Afro-Caribbean man from New York City, the Bronx. And so without having too many of us in leadership positions, I think it's incredibly important to carry that flag. And so why am I here, and why am I passionate about this work? I think we are marketers and we're storytellers, and we have a responsibility to shape the world that we live in today, for sure, but also the world that we aspire to live in the future through the stories that we tell on behalf of our clients. And so we're both representing agencies, you on the media side, but me on the creative side. It's really important that we look at the power of representation and the power of unlocking intersectional value in the stories that we tell. Because as we know, and I'm sure you'll share, the world is changing, right? And the world is increasingly diverse. And the fastest growing demographic is us in this room. And so we have to make sure that we're telling those stories to be to represent those people that we hope to be our future consumers and future leaders. And so I'm incredibly excited and humbled that, like you, my passions and what I think I'm good at really converge in this role. Impact work through through diversity and creativity, and really being able to unlock that is incredibly special. So.
Love it. Let's give them all a round of applause for that. And those of you joining, I know we've got folks in our virtual auditorium, virtual room. If there's anything you want to share about your Latinidad, drop it in the comments section. You all can still engage if you download the app and put it on there. I think it's, to your point, right, the community, we're becoming increasingly diverse, increasingly intersectional. And I think that it's important that we're sharing our stories and the awareness, right, that not all of us may speak Spanish. Some of us are immigrants, first, second, third, fourth, fifth generation, and then our Afro-Latino, Black Latino communities as well, right? So thank you for sharing. Claudia, I'm going to throw it back to you. One of my favorite things to do is being able to share the data, the statistics, the demographics, and I know you love doing this very much so. And so tell us, like, why is it so critical? What are some of the key facts, the key data that we should be utilizing to really express how powerful we are as a community?
Absolutely, and I'm so glad that Hispanic Heritage Month celebrations all across the country are becoming about data, about education, about stories. When I moved to the States and I started going to the celebrations, it was half an hour bad margaritas to check the box of I've done my Latino of the year, and so I'm so glad that we're moving to be data-centric and we're like educating. So look, I think it is important to understand that Latinos are driving the prosperity, the power, and the progress of America, and that Latinos are the driving force of the growth of this country. And I'm not saying that as a super proud Latina, I'm saying that because of the Census 2020 said it so clearly, and all the data points that I'm going to be saying are coming from trusted sources. So Latinos, we are the people. 62 million people, 20% of the population. We are almost 20% of the population, and that's today. But tomorrow will be 30% of the population. So by 2030, by 2050, 1 in every 3 Americans will be Latinos. So by 2050, 1 in every 3 Americans will be Latinos. Hello, hello, hola. Hello, hello, hola. That's a massive shift. And that will continue being because we are the drivers of the population growth. 51% of the population growth comes from the Latino community. We're very expansive we're very generous with our love. We're the most common interracial marriage in the country, so that will continue being. And not only we're the people, but we're also the youth. And I think that as marketers, whether you are on the media side or on the creative side, it's super important to understand this thing, this data point about the youth of Latinos, because 20% of the Gen Zs today in America are Latinos. If you start digging, like a little deeper, you're going to find that we're like 27% of Alpha. The younger you look, the more Latinos you will find. Our average age is 28 years old. That is a decade younger than the rest of the population. But the mode, which is my favorite data point ever, is the mode is meaning the median average mode. Remember the mode, the most common age. The most common age of 62 million Latinos today is?
30.
30?
Younger.
24.
You guys want to guess?
18, 19 years old.
Oh, wow.
The most common age of 62 million people today is 19 years old. So what is the most common age of non-Latinos?
You want to guess?
35, 50, 61. 1961.
Wow.
And that is a data point that I would like all your agency and all your clients to know about, because that means we're 4 decades of secular growth just there in this community, that if you don't start engaging with, pampering with today, if you don't start educating them, you're going to be at loss in no time. You will have to do Latinos whether you do it today or tomorrow. It's just going to be more costly if you do it tomorrow because of our age.
And
so we talked about the people, we talked about the youth. I just want to talk about 2 more points, the economy and then the purchasing power. Economically, Latinos generate $2.8 trillion is the size of our economy. Just to put that into perspective, because it sounds like, is that a lot or not? That is 12% of the GDP of the country. And that 12% of the GDP is growing 7% faster than China. So if you start looking at the globe, you start looking at like what are the fastest growing economies in the world today? It's China, India, Hispanics. So if we would be a standalone economy, we would be the 5th largest country in the world. And the last piece is the purchasing power. The purchasing power of Latinos is $2 trillion. 10 years ago, the most common product that Latinos bought was oil mazola. Today, lipsticks. We are the middle class of America because our income has moved from $45,000 10 years ago to $56,000, which makes us, all of Latinos, middle class. So there you go. Latinos are the drivers of the progress, the power, and the prosperity of this country, and it is now the moment to engage with us.
Yeah, all excellent points. I would love for the engagement in the chat for those that are participating. Like, what most stood out to you in terms of the data and the facts that Claudia just shared, and why? That would be great to hear from your feedback. And I think one of the most, well, a lot of important things, but one of the things that I want to emphasize, you said it'll be more costly because it's happening, right? If you're not investing now versus if you decide when we're already here.
Companies will not be able to sell or hire without Latinos. You will not be able to do it. So it's better to start doing it now. Our politicians will not be able to win an election without Latinos. So it's better to start investing today than do it later.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at a different cost.
All right. I hope everybody's wheels are turning and you're thinking about the action that needs to be done. What your individual contribution will be, because I think sometimes when we hear this type of data, it's overwhelming. You're like, what can be done? But you alone as an individual can really have an impact and a ripple effect just by sharing these facts, right? By making sure you're spreading the word. So Jason, building off of that, right? Talking about the future of the workforce, where the Latino workforce by 2050 will be 1 in 3 working age Americans. And being that the community is increasingly diverse and intersectional, how do we ensure that we're being intentional in terms of building and engaging the pipeline of talent?
Yeah, I'm just going to pick up where Claudia left off. It's really about, so I'm coming from a capacity of advising our clients, right? Our clients are interested in doing 3 things. Making sure that they're competing favorably for market share or dollar share of their clients' wallets, and that they're increasing purchasing power and then or purchasing activity, and then that drives growth. So if you put it in that language, it's really about future-proofing the business, right? So I'm saying the same thing that you're saying, but it's really about future-proofing the business. And so if you start with that point and you reverse engineer, it's no longer about doing the right thing, right? We've been talking about this for decades, right? It's important to have representation. Representation alone does not solve the problem. It really is about a couple things. One is, once you have that representation inside of your organization, how do you create mechanisms and levers to unlock the intersectional value that exists in that diversity? And by intersectional, I think I should just define it for those that don't know what that means. It's a term that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in the 80s and early 90s that really just speaks to the fact that we are more than just our physical identities, right? We are everything that makes us different is intersectional, right? So whether it's our race, our identity, sexual orientation, immigration status, right, is another one. So it really is unlocking all of that that makes us special for the benefit of the organization, but also for our consumers. And so I think it really is about thinking, no longer asking for permission, but really just asking for forgiveness and forging the path. And I think that's part of it. So it's really, let's stop asking for permission. Let's really think about this as a business imperative. I think we've talked about that ad nauseum, and really start to make impact in that area. And then it starts with having folks like myself and all of us in leadership positions that can advocate on behalf of the community.
Yeah, I love that. I think, the other thing I'll add on the intersectional piece is like the cultural iceberg, right? In that a very small percentage is what we see on the external, right? Versus the majority being underneath the iceberg, underneath the water, that it's really upon ourselves to unleash what that is, so that we are building those connections, we're empowering others who have the similar stories. And so I think that intersectional approach is powerful, especially as you look at the community and the diversity of the community that as we move forward. So anything else you want to add on this piece? And then
I mean, I'd love to add on to both of Jason and Claudia's feedback, because intersectionality and the the evolution of the Latino and Hispanic community can be a little bit scary for marketers because the community is changing, you know. And speaking of data, based on the latest Nielsen research, the Hispanic consumer, over a third are identifying as 2 or more races. Over 1/2 are bilingual. So there's a lot of fluidity. So a lot of questions on, you know, on behalf of the marketers of how do I speak to the Hispanic community authentically. And there's a real opportunity there because, you know, having representation, to your point, is a business imperative, and there's a lot of business challenges that need to be solved. From 2021, actually, the Hispanic consumer sees themselves less accurately reflected in media. So not having these perspectives truly is a detriment to the business and the industry because that's the future of the consumer. So you're both absolutely right there.
Can I just add to that?
Sure.
You know, so
then I got to go to my next question.
Oh, no, so please go to the next. No. I'll come back to that if there's time.
No, please. We don't have time.
Okay. Just want to tie it back to something that you both said. And I think, you know, we talk about it being a business imperative, but what does that actually mean? It means that when you look at, for example, in our communities, Asian community as well, Hispanic communities as well, the ways that from a brand's perspective, the ways that we pass along buying tradition or buying behavior is through tradition, right? So think about the times that you go to the supermarket when you buy those beans. Why are you buying those beans? You bought them because your grandmother bought them and because her mother bought them. And so from a brand standpoint, we got to think about, to your point, if Hispanic consumers are younger, thinking about future-proofing the business, think about how you insert yourself as a brand early on today with those future consumers because of the ways that we pass on those buying behaviors through tradition and word of mouth.
And I'm sorry, but Nielsen and the study we did together with Nielsen, the Hispanic sentiment study that we launched in Cannes, is a red flag saying, watch out, we are the future, but we're feeling increasingly excluded from the American society. 5 years ago, we felt 68% represented in the States, in America as a whole integrated, and today it's 48%. That's a 20-point drop. And we feel increasingly neglected or relegated by big brands and media. So we're turning to smaller brands that are like us, that are representing us. Like think of, you know, like some of the cases of Honest, you know, with Jessica Alba, and like eating the lunch of so many other companies because she was able to represent Latinos, our values, and what we are. So while there is an incredible future, there are like a real red flags on whether you represent us in a meaningful, respectful, and relevant way, or we might actually be turning what we have, which is loyalty.
The other resource too is the Edelman Trust Barometer that shows that the trust levels have also decreased among the community. So that's another resource to take a look at as well. Sarah, so my question for you is on building inclusive, equitable workspaces has been, you know, obviously the work that you shared, your passion that you're doing. How do we ensure, you know, building off of what you're talking about, that Latinos are included? Because there is, it's, you know, to Claudia's point in the sentiment study, an invisibility aspect that's being felt, and how do we ensure that we're taking that into consideration?
Yeah, so I feel like DE&I has traditionally been sort of shouldered as the responsibility of the diversity, equity, and inclusion team. But I really feel like it is a business imperative. We're telling you the facts about why it is, and it really is the responsibility of everyone within an organization, and here is why. You know, and what I love about sort of the Omnicom Media Group perspective on DE&I is it's a lens through which we evaluate every aspect of our organization. So when you think of diversity, equity, inclusion, traditionally you probably think of, you know, talent acquisition, benefits, even training, learning and development. But what I love is that now we're getting into the realm of partnerships with OMG Research on their Signal panel, which is reflective of the U.S. population, because we know that there's panel bias with, you know, Mike's team in terms of ensuring that we are taking an inclusive approach to cross-cultural planning and media and investment, to there's a whole spectrum, right? Now this really opens up the world of what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean. And I think that also expands what it means to be included as a specific community within your organization too. So I talked a little bit about sort of like the expansiveness with regards to our what we call our Unidos Leadership Network, which is a rebrand, actually thanks to Mike and the leadership team for our Latin and Hispanic BRG. We very much want to take a step back as a DE&I team, listen intently, and empower. We are really just the stewards to create that community. It's really the community leaders like Mike that tell us what the community needs, and it's our responsibility to listen intently, and then also to empower. So what does empowerment mean? It means providing resources, it means providing access, and it also means, very importantly, influence. So resources. Mujeres de ACE, we are a partner last year, this year, for many years to come, hopefully. We have a partnership with Harvard Business School. We also give our BRGs an annual budget, so making sure that they have all the resources they need to be a community that is heard and respected and valued. Access, we put all of our BRG community leaders, including the ULN, in front of our C-suite on a quarterly basis. We share with them the challenges, the opportunities, the resources that are needed by each of our communities, including our Latin and Hispanic community, and then we come together with a joint action plan, which is the influence part, that we are holding our leadership teams accountable to. And we're gonna get in front of them once a quarter, bring out that list, make sure that there is accountability there. So I feel like, you know, we are here for HHM, but really in terms of inclusivity and the different communities that we're servicing, that's how we make sure that voices are heard and acknowledged.
That's awesome. That's great. You definitely have to have leadership engagement and looking at, it's not just on your responsibility, right? It's the entire organization. And the other one that we just had a group of chief diversity officers gather in DC last week, and one of our key topics was, what's the CDO's role with AI, with artificial intelligence, and are we part of that table in terms of ensuring, right, the potential bias as it pertains to
100%.
the business,
Yes.
and then all the other structures in terms of talent acquisition and all that piece. So your role is so expansive, right? It's everything, right? So thank you for what you do.
But also it's really great for me, and I want to give you kudos because the plan that I just heard is great. Agencies have been traditionally in my entire life leading clients, telling them what's coming, giving them the advice. Right now, honestly, I think that there's so much work that is led by clients. Like companies like Anheuser-Busch and leaders like John here are really like ages ahead of the agency work in a way. And I do think that we have right now enough tools and enough understanding for you to be able to pick up the pieces. Again, in the Hispanic sentiment study, it's literally a roadmap, understanding not only the pain points of Latinos, but also the drivers of Latinos. We're turning to Latinidad. We're taking off our masks. Don't call me Mary, I'm Maria. Don't call me George, I'm Jorge. I'm going for my music. I'm going for my language. So you have a roadmap to go, and I'm really excited to see an industry that means so much for the community itself getting on board. So kudos to you, and wake up for everybody.
I love that you said that, Claudia, because I think some folks are still coming out. Like you mentioned a couple examples, and I have experience where we have some senior leaders at companies that perhaps were white presenting, or they didn't pronounce their name in Spanish, that now are saying, this is how you say my name, right? It's Patricia, it's not Patricia, or that they just never talked about their story, their upbringing. So if you haven't done so already, we welcome you to share your story. We welcome you, because I think sometimes we can be our worst enemies when it comes to that, right? And so our last question for everybody, and then we are going to open it up for some time for Q&A. So please have your questions ready, both here in the room and virtually of our leaders here. Is why is it critical, and we already talked about that, right? Why it's critical to ensure that we're engaging, we're advancing the talent, but what advice do you have for corporations or specifically the ERG, BRG groups, which for the most part, right, are volunteering because they really believe in the cause, what action or key recommendations do you have for them? So whoever wants to start.
I'll just say something really quickly. I think there's a study that I read I don't remember the source, but it said that ERGs and BRGs represent up to 4 times a brand's audience group. So think about that, right? So
Which I should say, sorry, Jason, if you're not familiar, employee resource groups or business resource groups, in case you're not, or affinity groups or network groups, right? They're called different things.
Yeah. So it's just think about that, think about the power that you have inside your walls as a company, as a brand, to tap into your potential consumer set. I think the other thing that we talked a lot about data, but we didn't really talk about influence. I think that's just kind of the undertone of this conversation. The influence of our community is so powerful. I mean, you look at just 2 weeks, or I think it was last weekend, Carol G just sold out MetLife. You know what I mean? Did you go to that? You went to that. So, Carol, she put on an amazing show. People are still talking about that. You see what Bad Bunny, of course, is turning the charts upside down. Even Ice Spice is connecting with Taylor Swift. I mean, the level of influence that our community brings to culture. And then on top of the influence, and I think I read, Edo did a study where they looked at the amount of sharing that happens in our community. I think it was like 30% of Latinos actually over-index on sharing on social media their favorite brands, their favorite products. So again, the influence in our community is something that we can't understate. It's shaping the entire world across various industries and modes of entertainment.
Thank you, Jason.
Well, we talked a lot about future-proofing today, and I think, AI is even part of future-proofing the DE&I industry. And in terms of future-proofing employee resource groups, business resource groups, the evolution of the ERG trajectory, because it's wonderful to build communities, but it's also really powerful to tap into those rich communities as thought leaders. And I feel like that is one piece of advice that I would provide is, to embrace that these are not just communities of people, these are communities of brilliant people. And so how do you really lean into that? So one of the things that we've done at OMG is actually launch a Culture and Insights Advisory Board so that existing and new clients can come to us and say, we have a business challenge. How do you help us to solve for that through your perspective, through your expertise? And I would also say that, some guidance for leaders is say what you mean and mean what you say. We can talk amongst ourselves and plan amongst ourselves and future-proof all we want and build our communities up, but leaders within organizations are really the ones that can't be paying lip service. They need to be authentic in leaning into DE&I, because I can see through that. I know other people can see through that as well when it's inauthentic, and then carry through with accountability with those C-suite roundtables where we have a seat at the table, where you're telling us where did our plans go, and what is your next step in terms of enriching and engaging in a more diverse community.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that accountability coming out from the 2020 to most recent, in terms of saying, hey, statements were made, what's going on, right? So
I just realized,
definitely appreciate the accountability piece.
I just realized that OMG stands for Omnicom Media Group. When
Yes.
you said like OMG, I was like OMG, she's so cool. OMG.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Second time I was
It's fun though, right?
But hearing OMG, I was like, all right. Look, I do have a piece, like a couple of pieces of advice, I would say. One for corporations is that there's tools out there that are like ready to go where you can make complex situations simple. We have an instrument where Patricia and I have been part of called the Hispanic Promise. More than 320 companies of all your clients have signed it. No agency has signed it. There are resources available. You can go to the hispanicstar.org where you can find all the data that you want on behavioral sentiment, consumer, every piece of data. So I think that there's enough material out there. The only thing that you need to do is take action. Just do it. Take the big bet, because small bets do not work. If you're going to do it big so that you can get the big results. You can see it in the NFL. You can see it in the way that PepsiCo, you can see it in all the success case stories have taken tools that are out there and have gone through the big bet. So take action. For ERGs or BRGs, one, I hope that all ERGs become BRGs because actually that's where the business is. And I think that one of the most successful things that I've seen all across these 320 companies that we work with is when you're affinity group is able to educate everybody so that you don't have to be fighting for the, like going for one power presentation after the other a little bit. So make sure that you bring people like Patricia, like myself, like everyone else to talk about the data, to educate everybody, your finance team, your sales teams, your HR team, your woman affinity group, everybody. When everybody knows of the opportunity, it's going to be much easier then to be strategic. And once you're strategic, you need to become relevant, because a lot of the cases, a lot of the action and real results happen when you have the magic taco, when you're the ERG or the BRG and their C-suite comes and boom, gets together and you're like, aha, I've been hearing this for so long, but now it's going to make it happen. And I think that the last piece I have of advice is for the industry. And I think that as an industry, you've been looking at Latinos as we have to get into you, but you're not seeing as what you can take out for Latinos for your other clients. You can totally translate Latinos into, translate Latino values and Latino things into mainstream and generate interest in the general consumption. What you're talking about is food, music, sports. I don't want to claim that, but Bonnie says like everybody wants to be Latino, but really no, like a little bit like that is coming through. It is translatable. If you start looking at the #1 beer in the country right now, if you start looking at like how Latino values are translating and transporting and being able to be an opportunity, so it's good to understand our community, tap into ours, but also to be able to translate those and make them like part of your success to getting to mainstream.
One last thing.
Sure, Jason.
Hispanic Heritage Month is no longer an excuse to get drunk off Coronas, right? Like,
or margaritas.
Or margaritas or anything else. I think that's, to me, I'm glad to see that we're elevating this conversation and giving it the importance that it deserves.
Yeah,
so thank you for all you do.
No, thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for your insights. I know we're taking some questions, but I don't know who. We'll take George. George, your question. MIS has a mic.
Here we go. Thank you for all that great information. My question is, how are each of you navigating the self-identification of Latinos through language? Latine, Latinx, Hispanic, etc.
That's a great question. I struggle with this because Afro-Latino has been this kind of conversation, and I am a black man. That's how I show up in the world. But when I think about the nuance of those words or those descriptors, I've tended to use in the recent past Afro-Caribbean, right? Not Afro-Latino or Afro-Latine, Afro-Caribbean specifically, because my family is from the Dominican Republic. And so we were the first stop on that boat when you look at history. And so that's incredibly important to me. So it speaks to the fact that I have Afro-Indigenous roots, specifically from the Caribbean, and that shapes me into a specific type of identity and human being. And so that's how I wrestle it. But, it's interesting. I think I try to be respectful. I try to kind of be aware of how people want to be identified, and I ask the question as opposed to kind of assuming that they want to be addressed a certain way.
Can you might think that I have strong opinions for everything, but no, like on this one I do have a strong opinion. Those are labels. Like Hispanics, just to clarify, Hispanics come from the language, Espanol. Latino, Latina comes from geography, Latin America. Latinx is a gender-neutral way to identify either of them. To start with, all of them are inventions that were created. Like there's no other country in the world that uses the term Hispanic or Latino. Someone in the border 75 years ago said we were M's or OTMs, so Mexicans or other than Mexicans, and someone said it's complicated, they all look the same more or less, so let's call them Latinos. So let's not make a big deal of it. It's a label. And labels are distracting or confusing. And only 3% of Latinos even know that those labels exist. What really matters is the meaning behind it. So that every time that word comes to you, you're thinking of growth, you're thinking of progress, you're thinking of makers, not takers, you're thinking of visibility, not invisibility. So don't get trapped on labels. Move on using whatever the hell you want to use, but start actually moving forward to make sure that Latinos are positioned as what we are. Positive contributors to the country.
Not wasting the time or the energy on what it should be or shouldn't be, right? I think that's, any other questions? I know we've got some time. And for the virtual, did you let me know? Is that Bobby? Okay, cool.
Hi, I just want to say thank you. Muchas gracias for coming here and speaking. It's been so awesome to hear everything you've had to say. Being a recent college graduate, you know, seeing professional development and going into the workforce, it's hard to see representation. So I wanted to ask you all, what is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger selves when you were first starting your careers, and how to overcome barriers that you might have faced?
I guess I can take that one. I would say, and I would say this to my current self, screw imposter syndrome. You know, I think I undervalued myself as a woman, as a person of color. I felt like I had to overachieve, be, you know, overqualified, go above and beyond. I remember seeing the lights in my building turn off because I worked so late as an assistant, being paid pretty much below minimum wage because we didn't have overtime those days. And really just acknowledging that I am enough and I'm here for a reason. Because the mental and spiritual burden of feeling like you're not enough or not achieving enough can be very, very heavy. And this is a time for you to explore. You know, you're new in this world. It's a time for you for self-discovery, for learning, and it should be really exciting, and you shouldn't have to have the weight of, am I good enough, sort of burdening you down in that experience.
I would just add two things. One is, don't underestimate the value that you bring to the table today, because that is what you're being paid for. That is why you were hired. And then the other thing is, don't subscribe to anyone else's narrative of what your life or your career should look like. And that's something that I know in my generation, it's something that I was always very deferential, whether it's to my parents or my mentors. It's like, no, I have to follow it this way. You don't have to, there is no blueprint. You can create your own blueprint. And so I would say that those two things.
And we launched yesterday a podcast called a podcast a la Latina, the podcast to succeed being your authentic self, really thinking of people like you. Like, you're my target audience. I want to make sure that you do it in half the time that we have to do it, that you get the tools and you understand the data so that you can embrace your own power, so that you can own your Latinidad, and then that together we can claim our rightful place, and that you will be hearing from other people on how they have done it. But a lot of that comes honestly from data, understanding, and that's why what Patricia said at the beginning, let's all look at the data and become not activists, but factivists, so that you know the fact that you're powerful. When you know that you represent 12% of the salary of anyone that you look at anybody in the street, you feel better. They can tell you, they can look at you weirdly and you're like, you're welcome, my friend, 12% of your salary on me. So, you know, if you start understanding that you're coming from a position of strength, of power, that any employer will want you because you're the future, you're so many, and you're so young, and we're so powerful, and we're so hard workers, and we're so ambitious, then you start flipping the script. We've been acting a script that is not ours, and I think that data will help us to move from stereotypes to facts and values, so that you can feel exactly as what you are, you know, like a powerful, progress and prosperity part of this country.
I need you as a part of my alarm clock in the morning, because you have me so hyped. I'm like,
The
yes!
podcast, yeah. I would just add, you know, speaking back to that little voice in our head that sometimes tells us we're not ready enough, we don't belong, and understanding what are some of the cultural norms that you're accustomed to, that like respect for authority and not, you know, and shifting when you need to, like, hey, I need to speak up to this leader right here. They need to know, right, my value, and all of the amazing things that we heard. Do we have a question from virtual? And then I know we had here too. Oh, okay. Sorry, I know we had Jennifer and then you, sorry.
This question is actually for Claudia. Hi, my name is Jennifer, and really love, you know, just your passion for Latinos and the Latino community. I come from a higher education background, and I know that you mentioned that we should be doing more within the educational world. One of the things that I've seen a lot has been the lack of access to Fortune 500 and up companies. I used to work as a employer engagement specialist, and what I would truly see from bigger companies was their lack of, or for lack of a better word, them not being open to going to smaller colleges that are Hispanic serving institutions, and not showing up to these career events or going in for panel discussions to inform students about ERGs, BRGs. Because when we're having the discussion about educating our Latino students, you talk to them, and some of them graduate, and most of the time they're like, what is an ERG? What is a BRG? And my initiatives when I worked in college campus recruiting was making sure that I was bringing on panelists to discuss, and I'm glad that you did this, Patricia. What is an ERG? Define what a BRG is, because we're not doing enough to help support these students once they're out there in the real world. So my question to you would be, what are some initiatives that you're actually working on to kind of help these individuals that are coming, like my colleague right here, that's, going into the workforce? What can you do to help them navigate those struggles of trying to get their foot in the door, but also at the same time working with those colleges to make sure that we're doing enough for them once they're out there?
I think that navigating corporations is one of the most salient issues that we see in all corporations, from the corporations and from Latinos. And I think that overall, while there are incredible organizations like Patricia, ACE, and a number of incredible other organizations that are helping to create the pipeline, train the pipeline, and make sure that they work with organizations on how do you start, at the entry level, navigating, getting in, be more aware of the rules of the game. We don't know the rules of the game. In many instances, we're the first generation of graduation of college. We're the first generation that ever made it, to be in a mid-level position. So we don't know what we don't know. And I think that we, as an organization, as World Human, we're working with corporations because only 10% of the Fortune 500 have even a strategy for Latinos. So we're starting, there's room for improvement, let's call it that way. But so we have to educate them, help corporations to get their strategies, have organizations pushing for more organizations that are helping diversity and inclusion officers to be successful in creating inclusive environments. So that's one way. On the other hand, colleges need to actually have more conversations with companies. If I look at HACO, which is like an incredible organization led by one of my role models, he has all of the workforce with government. There's no interaction with companies, so we have to put them on the same table. But what I'm calling to you, and what I'm saying is, we as Latinos, we need to do our part. We need to be educated about, what are the rules of the game. We're producing podcasts precisely for that, but we need to understand at the end of the day that we have to create the networks that we don't have. We have to artificially, if there's no seat at the table, we have to bring our chair, and we have to start looking at ways in which we support each other. We are there for each other. We open the door for each other. We buy from each other. We mentor each other, because there's no other ways in which we're going to be able to permeate the status quo if we don't show up as one unity. So that's why I think that as you getting into corporate America, make sure you show up in your, make sure that you show up in your college, in your affinity groups, show up, be part of it. Make yourself aware of, the data that we have, but also be part of networks so that we can, we can slowly be able to, becoming a strong network is going to help them to help the company, and everybody's going to win. But I do think that it is absolutely imperative that we understand where the rules of the game are written so that you can go and get them. Who are the people that are sharing the same passion as you? When you have your passion and you have your people, then it's more likely that we're going to be able to show up and be successful.
Yeah,
Thank
I just
you.
want to add really quickly to that, and you can speak to this because so Sarah and I happen to work closely together on our Omnicom leadership team across diversity efforts. But one of the things that we're doing, and Sarah, you can chime in, is that we're looking at career pathing differently, right? So you can, as young folks, you recently interviewed for jobs, and I'm sure one of the interview questions that you got was, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And we expect you to have an answer for that. But usually the organization doesn't have an answer for that. So what we're doing is turning that lens on ourselves and saying, what's your name again? Jennifer. When Jennifer, from the moment we interview you to the moment that you've experienced our organization, we have to think about your career path differently, so that we know that at year 3, you're going to want a promotion. At year 5, you're going to want a raise. And so we want to make sure that we're proactively thinking about your career path and putting the onus on us, not just on yourself.
And just I forgot the point that I was going to make about perception. The companies that are not going to the places where we're going to school probably are not good companies for you anyways, to start with. But secondly, it's imperative that we collectively, we change our perception because we're seen as negative, as incapable of doing anything, that we have so many stereotypes and biases that if we were able to eliminate them and people would start looking at us as potential, not as a nuance, not as, like only physical attributes that we have, then you're going to start seeing more and more companies willing to go to where the Latino universities are. So it's a vicious
I want to squeeze in one more question if we can, virtual, and then we got 5 minutes and we got to wrap it up.
Thank you. We do have a virtual question from Yolanda Villegas. The numbers are there, the data is there, but as an advocate consultant, I constantly hear we are not ready, maybe next year. I want to say, okay, you're lost, but it's so frustrating. What advice do you have to give advocates like us who keep hearing no?
To me, no is a soft no. And I feel like no comes from a place of fear. So depends on who's telling you no. You have to understand what their fears, what their challenges, what the barriers that they're seeing are, and break through that no with a yes. Because it's never actually a no. It's a suggestion.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to shut up after this, I promise. But look, I say chin up and keep going because this is our job that we have, our generation. The hard work is done by our parents. We owe it to our ancestors to chin up and endure the bruises. We own it to them because they came with, the hard work is done by them. They came with 2 to 3 jobs, bleeding hands to be able to give us the opportunities that we have today. So it is time for us to accept that we're the transition generation, that's the generation that has to endure it. Yes, it's me again with the Latino. We just have to finish the job. All the conditions are there for us to succeed. Suck it up, chin up, and let's keep going.
Jason?
No, I mean, I can't follow that. So that's, that's it.
Oh my goodness. Well, please join me in giving our wonderful leaders here a round of applause. Thank you for your time, your insights, and for helping ASE do this pre-launch of Hispanic Heritage Month. Last thing I'll say is that our community comes with a lot of humility, which is a beautiful value, right? I think to everybody's point here is how are we empowering ourselves to speak up, to share our stories, to advocate, and really know that it's going to make a difference. Whether you've got to go 10 times to keep asking and pushing, leaning into your why, which to some of us may be the history of our parents, our grandparents, the sacrifices that they made, whether it's the work that you're doing and really understanding and pushing for that vision that you have, and reflecting that often, because the struggles will continue to come, right? The challenges will continue to come as they've had. And if you don't have your why and your sense of purpose, it's going to be tougher to overcome those challenges and to continue to push. So lean on this community, the ASE community, to be your support network, because I truly believe that dreams flourish when you cultivate them with community, and ASE has been my community, and thank you for being a part of it, and thank you for helping us pre-kickoff Hispanic Heritage Month. Thank you, everyone.